deliver. So here we are, going to talk today about UFC Vegas 99. Obviously, Anthony Fluffy Hernandez was very, very dominant in the main event. And then also, we got to talk about what Francis Ngannou did in PFL. We got to talk about the new gloves. So without further ado, let's get down to business. And also, I want to talk to the people in the chat because this is my first time going live in a long time. So it's good to be able to interact with y'all. So if you're on Twitter, make sure you hit that retweet button so we get some more people in here. And let's do this. So main event, make it to the distance, but it was kind of a mercy stoppage. That was an absolute mauling. Listen, this guy, Anthony Fluffy Hernandez, is the definition of weaponized cardio. I haven't seen an attack like this since Khabib. That's why I'm calling him the Mexican-American Khabib. When you look at these numbers, it's unlike, well, I can't say it's unlike anything I've ever seen before because Khabib existed. But this dude landed 10 takedowns. Guess how many he attempted? He attempted 29. That takes so much energy to just attempt 3 takedowns, let alone 29. Now think about what that does to your opponent, because people were criticizing Michel Pereira. Like, man, he had nothing left after round 1. So I'm actually not one to criticize Michel Pereira on that. Actually, I give all the credit and glory to Anthony Fluffy Hernandez because the pace he pushes is insane. If Michel Pereira truly had a cardio issue or something like that, he would have been put away earlier in the fight. But, I mean, y'all see the size of that dude, the shape that he's in. The reason he was able to take such a sustained beating is because of the shape he was in. Like, even when, mentally he was like, oh my God, like I can't do anything to this guy physically, he was still able to still be there and answer the bell up until the 5th round. So respect to Michel Pereira. I definitely think he will be back. But as we learned last night, that was just a terrible style matchup for him. But this guy, Fluffy Hernandez, has to move up the rankings. And I'm thinking into the top 5. Like, I'm thinking that a performance like that, I mean, you can't deny this guy the opportunity to face off with. Let's look at the rankings right now. So at middleweight, the current top 5, we got Sean Strickland, who's fighting Duplessis for the title. So that's not a possibility. Number 2 is Israel Adesanya. He's not booked. That's a possibility. Robert Whittaker is fighting Hamzat Chimaev. So that's not an option. Nasruddin Imavov, he's not booked. Caio Borralho, he's not booked. If you want to look outside the top 5, you got Marvin Vettori, Jared Cannonier. He's already beat Brendan Allen back in the LFA days. So, I mean, you could do the Vettori thing. Vettori is kind of gatekeeping a number 6 spot, but I think that's a waste of time. Why not just go ahead and get this guy Fluffy into the top 5, put him in there with Israel Adesanya, because stylistically, I think that's an incredible matchup. I think Israel might be the favorite there just because of the name value, the fact that the guy's a former champion, a former 2-time champion, but stylistically, that's a nightmare fight for Israel Adesanya. And it seems like almost every opponent, Fluffy is a nightmare for any opponent that can't get him out early. And last night, Michel Pereira, I mean, it seemed like he hurt him to the body early, but that seems to be a common trend in Fluffy Hernandez fights. He gets hurt to the body early, and then if you don't put him away, he grinds you out. He systematically dismantles you. And the fact, again, 29 takedowns attempted, that is just insane use of weaponized cardio. So props to Fluffy, man, and let's see him in the top 5. I see in the comments, let's see if I can pull up the comments. Okay, so I'm not on StreamYard, I'm on YouTube. So on StreamYard, you can post the comments on this live stream that the fans are saying, but here it won't let me. It won't let me put it on the screen, but I can read what y'all are saying. So one option is Imavov. Yeah, I said that. My thing with Imavov is Imavov likes to fight at such a lower pace than Fluffy. And it comes down to the same dynamic. I really do think that Imavov would gas out and get mauled down the stretch. I want to see that Izzy fight. Let Anthony Fluffy Hernandez get that big name on his resume. And let's see if Izzy's really still the number 2 guy on planet Earth. That's the fight I want to see. So let's talk about the PFL main event. Francis Ngannou went out there. First fight in MMA since 2021. He leaves the UFC as the heavyweight champion, had that insane contract dispute. One of the only guys to go out as a champion, but not just a champion, the heavyweight champion, meaning the baddest man on the planet, and goes to PFL, which was kind of a crazy move. And then he gets those 2 big boxing matches against 2 of the, biggest name heavyweights on planet Earth, Tyson Fury, which he performed really well for being an 0-0 guy against, the Gypsy King. Was like, oh my God, they robbed him on a split there. And even if you don't think they robbed him on a split there, the fact that he got a knockdown, the fact that he performed as competitively as he did was super admirable. And I honestly thought that he could have retired that night, went out on top, and yeah, went out as the baddest man on the planet. But he came back, fought Anthony Joshua. He double dipped in boxing. He got destroyed. What everyone thought should have happened in the Tyson Fury fight happened in the Anthony Joshua fight. So I was questioning, okay, well, now that the fairy tale is over and he's no longer the baddest man on the planet, now he's got to come back to MMA. Hasn't fought in a cage in 3 years. This ain't boxing anymore. This ain't 16-ounce gloves. You know, you can't throw kicks, knees, elbows, no ground game, no nothing. And you'd think, kind of like McGregor, when he went to boxing, the only thing he trained is boxing, and he came back to MMA, was never the same. So I thought maybe a similar thing would happen to Francis. I even took Renan Ferreira at plus 250 odds on a small shot, thinking, listen, man, Ferreira's had 8 MMA fights since the last time you competed inside a cage or octagon, and it didn't make a difference at all. Francis Ngannou goes out there. They kind of feel each other out a little bit. They throw a couple calf kicks, and as soon as Francis decided, okay, now it's time to close the show, he takes him down right away. Renan kind of had him in this little tricky guard where both legs were hooked, but the disadvantage of having him in that kind of guard is that, well, the advantage is he can't get any damage off on you and he can't pass, but the disadvantage is you can't get back up to your feet. So Renan had to make a decision. All right, I got to get back up to my feet. So I got to let go of these like 2 hooks in that kind of weird guard he was doing. The dude is 6'8", so he can, put his legs places that other people can't. So he lets go of that guard to get back up to his feet. But the way to get back up to your feet in that scenario is actually to give up your back. And it's like a risk that a lot of people take. Sometimes you got to give up your back to get back up to your feet. He gives up his back to get back up to his feet, but unfortunately, he was never able to get back up to his feet. Francis was ready for that, and he capitalized, and he threw ground and pounds from the heavens. And once the ref stopped that fight, I mean, you saw the immediate outpour of emotion that Francis had. And, I think all of us, felt for him there. I don't want to say we were happy for him. Like, we're happy for him that he won, of course, but obviously I think he would rather, see his son again than win a fight. So it was a very like bittersweet moment, right? Because yeah, it was just an emotional moment. Yeah, I truly find that I truly hope that Francis finds inner peace, because I mean I couldn't imagine what he went through in that scenario. So now he's the PFL heavyweight champ, but the issue is now it's like, who the hell does he fight now? Ryan Bader, Dennis Goltsov, Bruno Capoloza. It's like Jonah Hill cut. I think that, I mean, he can go out on top now. You can, now that you just won a fight. I mean, technically you haven't lost in MMA since the first Stipe fight, so he can go out on top again if that's what he wants to do. But if he wants to keep fighting in MMA, it's just the PFL roster is not deep enough for Francis Ngannou to even be satisfied. Like, is he going to be motivated to go train for a Maurice Green fight? You know what I'm saying? I don't think he has to train to win that fight. Give me a second, y'all. I'm gonna retweet that I'm live now, get some more people in here, and if y'all can do me that favor as well, I really appreciate it. But yeah, man, big props to Francis Ngannou. You have to be heartless to not feel happy for that result, So yeah, man, stoked for him. Co-main event of UFC, we had Rob Font taking on Kyler Phillips. I dropped a unit on the under at plus 200. I want to talk about these gloves, but not yet. This fight, there was literally no instance where it was close to being finished at all. I think that Kyler Phillips, he has shown cardio issues in the past because the dude does go kind of balls to the wall. And I was surprised how much he slowed down in the second and third rounds. I mean, I guess you can't be that surprised because it's been shown on tape. I mean, when he lost to Paiva, similar thing happened. The only difference being is that, he almost killed Paiva in round 1, whereas with Font, he just wrestled him heavily in round 1. And listen, man, like we were talking about with Fluffy, Fluffy can attempt 29 takedowns and not get tired. Kyler Phillips only got 4 takedowns and he got exhausted. So that just gives a lot of credit to how elite a dude like Fluffy is and how taxing that style truly is. Like, not everybody can do it. And you saw last night a lighter guy, Kyler Phillips, who weighed in 135 pounds on weigh-in day, probably what, 150 on fight day, 55 at most on fight day. I mean, he couldn't get that game plan going to save his life, man. So it just like I said, the Kyler performance, if anything, it gives more praise to Fluffy Hernandez. And shout out Rob Font, man. Like, you saved your career. Like, if you would have lost this fight, especially the way he's been losing these last few fights where he's getting wobbled all over the place, he's getting wrestled easily, that might have been it. That might have been time to hang it up. 37 years old. But now, when you look at it, he's 2-2 in his last 4 fights, knocked out Adrian Yanez in the first round, beat Kyler Phillips, who was on the up. The only losses are to Sandhagen and Davison. Now, all of a sudden, the narrative changes. That's how crazy the sport is. Now, all of a sudden, Rob Font's going to get another big fight. So, yeah, happy for him, man. Do I think that, because I saw some people on Twitter getting on their high horse. Everybody was saying Rob Font is washed. Look at him now. Roo, roo, roo. I mean, you can't just ignore the damage he took in those past fights. And you also got to bring up, I mean, did Kyler throw anything damaging at him that would get Rob Font wobbling? No, he didn't land any of his head kicks. He didn't land any of those like leaping elbows like he did against Paiva. So he didn't land that shin to the dome like he did against Song Yadong. So of course Rob Font didn't wobble or get dropped. Kyler Phillips didn't throw anything deadly at him. Kyler Phillips was trying to wrestle him the whole time. He gassed out from wrestling him in that first round, and he basically was kind of running away trying to point the last 2 rounds. So yeah, in those scenarios where you're not throwing anything devastating at Rob Font and you can't consistently wrestle him for more than 1 round, he's going to win. And that's what happened last night. So again, this is not to be rude to Rob Font. Clap for the performance and all that, but people saying he's back or, oh, he's not really on a decline. Like, yeah, okay, we'll see. We'll see how he gets matched up next, and we'll take it from there. For Kyler Phillips, this is a big setback, man. Let's take a look at these rankings. So this was Kyler Phillips' chance to get into the top 10 because currently he's number 12. Rob Font was number 10. So Rob Font was gatekeeping that top 10 spot, and Kyler had that chance, and he blew it. So now Kyler's probably going to have to go fight like Montel Jackson, who's ranked lower than Kyler, but it's a way worse matchup for Kyler than Rob Font was. So it's like, yeah, you blew your opportunity, kid. It's too bad because I think Kyler is that talented. I think Kyler is that good, but I don't know. It's weird to see a guy that small not be able to manage, his energy levels. So it was what it was. Now we got to talk about the co-main event in PFL. So another one I was wrong on, Pacheco and Cyborg. I was under the impression that Cyborg finally met her match. You've seen Pacheco go out there, beat Kayla Harrison, first of all, knocking a bunch of girls out in the first round, just like Cyborg does, but 10 years younger. And those first 2 rounds, Cyborg went out there. I thought she sealed those first 2 rounds. I thought she was looking good. But in that 3rd round, I saw a championship adjustment from Larissa Pacheco in the distance in which she was fighting at. She didn't want to be against the fence. She tried to Max Holloway it up a little bit. And then at the end of that round, she got on top. It seemed like, okay, now the momentum is shifting towards Pacheco. But then Cyborg makes an adjustment on top of an adjustment, and she really bit down in those 4th and 5th rounds. Like, there's nothing you can take away from Cyborg in the championship rounds. And it was very, not alarming, but it was just kind of disheartening and disappointing that Pacheco didn't push a little harder in the 4th and 5th, because I truly do believe that fight was within reach. People were acting like it was some blowout. No, it wasn't. That was a competitive fight, and I would have liked to see Pacheco maybe work on that cut a little bit more. I would have liked to see her push the pedal to the metal a little bit more. But then again, you think about this. She's won the $1 million 2 years in a row. So on one hand, you can look at it like, well, I mean, she don't need this shit no more. But I mean, Cyborg is a multimillionaire too. But I'm just saying, Pacheco, you won the $1 million 2 years in a row. You don't need this shit no more. But at the same time, you probably grew up with a poster of Cyborg on your wall. You grew up idolizing this girl. Like, this is your big chance to really become a star and not just make 2 million, make multi-millions. I'm sure she still did well, actually, no one bought the pay-per-view, so never mind. But I'm sure she still did from the investors of PFL. But yeah, I would have liked to seen a little bit more effort from Pacheco in the 4th and 5th round, because I truly do believe that fight was within reach, but nothing to take away from Cyborg, man, because she's a legend of the sport. For 39 years old, you set back a girl that was 10 years younger than you, and you did so in a war in impressive fashion. So yeah, shout out Cyborg. Well, now is she gonna go back to fighting the Charmaine Tweets and the Julia Budds again? It's like that's what sucks about PFL. It's like, okay, they'll have a couple good fighters. Okay, you beat those good fighters, then what? Then what? You know, so it's like, is Cyborg going to rematch Pacheco like 10 times? Because that's the only person that can compete with her in PFL. So let's talk about the feature bout in UFC, Charles Johnson and Sue Mudaerji. Fight was closer than anticipated. Fight was closer than the odds indicated. Why was that? Because to beat Sue, you must wrestle Sue. To beat him dominantly, at least. Charles Johnson doesn't wrestle anybody. Charles Johnson is more of a volume guy. So you have a striking match with Sue. And hey, Johnson went out there and won that striking match with Sue. Even almost got a second round knockout. That one, I thought they maybe could have stopped it. I guess the argument for not stopping it is, hey, look, Sue went out there and won the third round. So why would you stop it? I guess that's a valid point. But there were a lot of unanswered shots. But listen, Charles extended his win streak. Shout out to him. I hope they give Sue another chance. I know it's a 3-fight skid, but it seemed like Sue really, really wanted it, man. It seemed, I mean, of course he wanted it. You know, his job was on the line, but I still think Sue can compete with some of these guys at flyweight. Absolutely. Well, he just competed last night, so it's not. I think I know he can. So I'd give Sue another chance. Give him a lower guy, like someone that's not ranked. Give him one of these. Give him the dude that lost to Clayton Carpenter last week. Like, if you can't win that, then then it's probably time to look at other options. But I truly do believe that Sue can still hang at the UFC. Maybe not, with some top 15 guys, but flyweight ain't as thin as it used to be. Like, it used to be do you guys remember when flyweight first came out and they didn't even have 15 fighters? They'd have the rankings and you couldn't even complete 13, 14, 15. Now, what is there, at least like 40 or 50 fighters on the flyweight roster? So yeah, do Sue versus Edgar Chairez. How about that? So Cameron Smotherman upsetting Jake Hadley. Was Jake Hadley really on Twitter acting like he won that fight? Did that happen, or am I imagining things? Because, man, Hadley has been a bit of a disappointment. The kid's insanely talented. Like, when he gets you, he gets you. Like, it's just, I think there's something mental with the kid, and I can't quite figure it out, because when he wins, for the most part, usually looks pretty impressive. But when he loses, it's like disheartening. It's like you wanted it more than him. It's like you figured him out and there's no adjustments. There's no plan B. Yeah, so it was unfortunate. But shout out to Cameron Smotherman. Word on the street is this dude Smotherman was cornering someone in Abu Dhabi or Dubai on fight week before he even got the call. He takes like a 16-hour flight, right, on short notice, makes weight, and goes out there and does what he does. Yeah, and like, this is a dude that got knocked out on Contender Series against not the best opponent at all. So to rebound on your regional scene, take this short notice call, and go out there against someone in Jake Hadley who, listen, that guy, Jake Hadley's the one in the UFC 3 times. He won on Contender Series. Dana said didn't Dana say that Hadley was special because Hadley missed weight on Contenders and Dana signed him anyways? And I think on that same episode, Christian Rodriguez also missed weight, but Dana didn't sign him. So I'm just saying, man, like, that's a big win for Cameron Smotherman, especially in his debut. But we'll have to see what they do next, because I still think that you can't just rush a kid like Smotherman. You gotta take it one step at a time. But hey, it was good to see him get a win. And Hadley, let's rebook that Brady Heastand fight, and that'll be his last chance. Let's rebook that Brady Heastand fight. Now let's talk about Paul Hughes versus AJ McKee. So the bet I did win this weekend was that plus 160 on Paul Hughes against AJ McKee. I was really happy about that. I wasn't happy that it was a split decision. I mean, I'm happy to cash a dog on a split, but how was that a split, guys? And again, I'm not being biased because I had money on it. I will let you know. Like, y'all saw me tweet yesterday in the middle of fights, like, hey, -1 unit on this guy. If the fight's not over, but I think I lost, I'm cool with it. Whereas this one, when it was a split, I thought that 30-27 Hughes is a better scorecard than 29-28 McKee. I was shocked that anyone can come to the conclusion that McKee won 2 rounds in that fight. Now, shout out McKee. I think that he's insanely talented. And honestly, like I said on the breakdown for PFL, I think around 2020/2021, that McKee was arguably a top 15 pound for pound guy. But after that second Patricio fight, he just hasn't been the same, man. Like I told y'all, that Sydney Outlaw fight where he won the fight off his back. It's cool to see old school, Boss Rutan, Kevin Randleman, or like Kenny Florian, Sean Shirk type stuff. Even like Carlos Condit off his back, but like AJ McKee is like a credentialed wrestler. Like you're not used to seeing a guy like that win fights off his back. And what I loved about what Hughes was doing in there, Hughes kept timing this beautiful knee. And I don't know this for a fact, but I'm willing to wager and assume and guess that that was something they trained extensively. They probably saw something on film because he kept going to that knee over and over, and the timing on it was absolutely gorgeous. Like Hughes seems like a really promising prospect. Let me check out how old he is. I think he's 27, actually. I don't need to check it out. He's 27. So the whole thing about why didn't Hughes go to the UFC? Why did he go to PFL? Real quick, before I do that, y'all leave me more comments, leave me questions, because once I'm done talking about these cards, I'm gonna address the chat, and I'm also going to tweet out right now that I'm live in this motherfucker. So y'all come, everybody on Twitter, come join me. Sorry, I can't multitask, so just give me 1 sec to tweet this out. Join me live right now, motherfuckers. All right, maybe not motherfuckers, but join me live right now, my friends. Let's chat. Okay, so back to Hughes and McKee. So the whole thing about, should he have gone to the UFC? Did he do the right choice? Going to PFL. I think he would have won either way. What I mean by that is this. So I think that with Hughes, so he took more money up front, is my guess. I don't know any numbers here, so maybe I'm way off on this. Maybe this is total bullshit. But what I think happened with Hughes in the UFC/PFL situation was this: PFL offered him more money up front, right? So he was like, "Hey, I can fight easier competition for more money." And I say easier competition. AJ McKee is no fucking slouch, but I'm just saying, like, compare AJ McKee to any of the top 5 featherweights in the UFC right now. Not in 2020 or in 2021. I'm talking about right now. You can't. Okay, so get a lot more money to fight lesser competition and probably getting 6 figures already, if not working his way up to it pretty soon. Versus go to the UFC and not start off with as much, but build your way up to potentially more than you make total in PFL. Because I truly do believe that Paul Hughes is that good where he'd go out there, starch a couple guys, get a couple 50K bonuses. They'd immediately give him a new contract because he'd prove his worth. And then he'd be stacking those paychecks in the UFC, fight legitimate competition, move up the rankings, get a title shot one day. But you could also look at it as, hey, he's only 27. He just beat AJ McKee. Now he's going to join the PFL tournament, go win that millie. And if they don't fuck him on some, championship clause where like he wins the belt, now he has to stay in PFL for life. As long as they don't screw him on some stuff like that, maybe he can go win the million and then come to UFC, have a little bit more negotiation leverage. Now, I don't personally think that they were trying to offer him the entry level pay. Again, I don't know the actual numbers, but I don't truly believe that UFC was going to offer Paul Hughes entry level pay. But I also don't believe they were going to give him, elite fighter pay. I think they were going to give him prove yourself pay. And I think PFL was more willing to be like, hey, we'll give you a larger sum up front to fight lesser competition. And Paul Hughes decided to go that route. So shout out to him. He looked great last night. I kept talking about the knees. What about the takedown defense? What about the punches and bunches? What about the fact that AJ McKee looked, that's the first time I've ever seen that look on AJ McKee's face. Like, oh my God, like this guy's actually in here competing with me. This guy's standing up to me. This guy dropped me. I've never experienced that before in my life. Like even in that Patricio fight, that was, AJ McKee tried to act like he won that fight. I don't know if he's trying to act like he won this fight too, but he shouldn't. Let's just leave it at that. So shout out Paul Hughes, not just for the dog cash, but for the great performance, because this was a step up in competition. But not such a large step up because you got to remember Hughes still had a 5-round war with Morgan Charrier on his regional, which he won. Had a 5-round war with Vucenic, which he won. So it's not like this was his first introduction to real competition, but it was his first introduction to a guy that at one point could have been a top 15 pound for pound, maybe like 4 years ago. So yeah, shout out Paul Hughes. So Darren Elkins and Daniel Pineda, man, they got the fight of the night. It was a sick fight. It was a badass fight. Just a lot of back and forth, some nasty guillotine attempts from Daniel Pineda. I'm a huge fan of guillotines. I'm also a dude named Daniel that likes guillotines. So shout out Daniel Pineda and Darren Elkins, the damage. I mean, these two dudes are like 40 years old, still giving everything they got. And you'd think with people that age, like, they see a little bit of their blood or they get rocked or this or that, or they get into a bad spot. Like, hey, man, I've had a long career. I'm 40. I don't need this shit. I'm going to check out, get half my check, which is still probably 6 figures. I mean, how many UFC fights have these guys had? They've worked up their way up their contracts, but there was zero quit in either of these warriors. These guys went eyeball to eyeball to see who blinks first, and neither guy blinked first. It was badass, man. Curious how y'all scored it. Let me know in the comments how y'all scored that Pineda fight. Let me see what MMA Decision said about it. Pineda Elkins. Let's see how the media scored that fight. I was at like I'm out of town. I was at like I don't know how to explain what I went to, like a botanical garden type thing. While this fight was going on, I was like watching on my phone. Okay, most people scored it for Elkins. Unanimously, the judges all said that Pineda won the first round but lost the next 2. So, okay, seems unanimous. But I did kind of think that there was a case for Pineda winning, but you can't sit here and act like that was some robbery or any bullshit like that. It was a great fight. It was truly a great fight. Y'all gotta let me know how to put these comments on the screen, man. So StreamYard lets me do that, but StreamYard also charges me way too much. YouTube ain't charging me shit for this, so thank you, YouTube. So shout out Elkins and Pineda. Pineda retired. It would have been cool to see Elkins retire, but I don't think this guy's gonna retire until you have to drag him out of the octagon. Like, I think Elkins, literally, what I think is gonna happen with Elkins. I mean, I don't know if I want to say this, but what kind of win streak is he on? First of all, because like it's crazy. This dude's 40 years old. Look at this dude. Won 3 of his last 4 fights. You know what I'm saying? Like, Elkins is a G, but man, these things don't end well. Like, I think that if I had to guess, probably, goes on like a 4-fight skid, but that dude will never retire. Then goes to the regional scene, keeps fighting. Might see him in bare knuckle. Man, Elkins without wrestling, though, would be a disaster. So, yeah, I just hope it ends well for him. I really do. He's already 40. You got to think about these things. But it's none of my business. So whatever you decide to do, I support. Asu Almabaya versus Mateus Nicolau. I mean, I think this fight kind of went how most expected. That my boy Meticulous said, could you imagine Elkins in bare knuckle? Darren, wait. Darren, no. Darren, please. Y'all got to show me how to put these comments on the screen, man. So Asu Almabaya versus Mateus Nicolau. I think that fight went exactly how people expected, where Asu just kind of worked harder. Like, Mateus is really good. He's technically sound. He just doesn't do enough, man. And his chin also showed reared its ugly head last night too. He got dropped by a guy who isn't known for dropping too many people. But I was happy to see Mateus recover. I don't think Mateus looked bad. I don't think Mateus ever looks bad. It's like, in those fights, he gets caught. He usually looks good, and then he gets caught. In this fight, he looks good. He just didn't do enough. Asu just, just pushed a higher pace. That's all it was. That's it. So shout out Asu. Like, that's all you got to do to beat Nicolau. Push a higher pace. Do more. It sucks, man, because at one point, I really did think that Nicolau could have made a run. I really thought that maybe, when was the Smolka fight? Let me pull that up real quick. So the Smolka fight was back in 2017. Yeah, and he was like undefeated in the UFC back then. He had beat John Moraga, who was a former title challenger. The Smolka fight was insane. And then he comes back, gets knocked out in the first round by Dustin Ortiz, gets cut from the UFC, interestingly enough. I don't know if he got cut or if they just didn't renew his contract, because that was his fourth UFC fight. Maybe he just had a 4-fight deal. And they were like, thanks, but no thanks. But he came back to the UFC after a little stint elsewhere, goes on a 4-fight win streak, then gets knocked out twice in a row, and then the Almabayev fight. So what do we do with Asu Almabayev? Next? Well, that's a good question. Let's look at the rankings. So currently, before yesterday, they had Nicolau number 7. Oh, wow. And Asu was 14. So Asu is about to jump into the top 10. So, okay, these rankings, man. Urseg number 8? How the hell is Urseg a top 10 guy? Because he lost his title fight? That's why? Because he beat David Dvorak? Who did Urseg? Oh, he beat Matt Schnell? Like, if you're a top 15 flyweight and you haven't figured out how to beat Matt Schnell yet, there's a big problem. Yeah, I think there needs to be a big overhaul of the flyweight rankings. No disrespect to Mateus Nicolau or Steve Urseg, but I think that Asu Almabayev and Cody Durden got to replace them. So it is what it is. So let's see what else happened last night. I didn't really watch too many of the other PFL fights. I mean, I saw the Rafion Stotts fight. That fight was sick. That fight was badass. It looked like that dude, Breno, had something for Stotts early. I thought he was about to knock Stotts out. He hurt Stotts badly. Stotts looked really, really bad in the first round. And then Stotts started making these adjustments. He started going to his wrestling. And, at first it wasn't working. But he stayed focused on the path, stayed relentless. And eventually, man, got that rear naked choke. That was sick, dude. That was such an adjustment by Rafion Stotts. Very, very impressive. So Gian Matsumoto and Brad Katona. I didn't get a chance to watch this fight because I was doing stuff with my family. What I heard from it was that it was a sick fight and arguably the fight of the night. So I need to go back and rewatch it and form my own opinion. But all 3 judges had the first round for Katona, the next 2 for Matsumoto. So shout out Matsumoto. I'll have a better opinion when I get the chance to watch that fight. Jocelyn Edwards and Tamiris Vidal. Yeah, I regret not betting Jocelyn Edwards. As soon as this fight got announced. So one of my biggest betting angles is fade people that don't belong in the UFC. Tamiris Vidal does not belong in the UFC. But when I saw the minus 200 on Jocelyn Edwards, it was like, it should have been like, oh, wow, she should be minus 750. But I was like, minus 200 on Jocelyn Edwards? I can't do that. Fucking stupid. Who cares if it was minus 200? Look at the opponent she was up against. I should have taken it anyways. And then she looked minus 750 in there. Tamiris Vidal simply doesn't belong. You see her win over Eileen Perez. That was I don't remember the exact illegal strike, but it's, like the Aljo situation. When you get knocked out with a knee and they call you the winner, it's like, that doesn't make you a winner. So unfortunately, I think that was the last chance we had to fade Vidal. She's probably out. And with Jocelyn, she got to maybe lay off the squats a bit to make weight. You know what I'm saying? Shout out Jocelyn on the well-rounded performance. Literally well-rounded. But just has to figure out how to make weight. Elise Reed and Jessica Panay. I was showering during that fight. I didn't get to see it. But looking at the stats, damn, Elise Reed, 117 significant strikes. Looks like she only gave up 1 takedown. Very impressive. And you look at her other stats, she's never put up that kind of volume before. And wow, Panay went 1 for 13 on takedowns. So Elise Reed's takedown defense stats are about to shoot up highly. Melissa Martinez and Elise Ardelian. I finally said it right. I'm not sure that fight was really 30-27, like everyone says, man. I felt like that second round could have arguably gone to Ardelian. Then that third round, there was some controversy. I guess, tell me what y'all think is the bigger controversy. There being a 30-27 for Melissa, or them not stopping the fight in the third round for that body kick. So tell me what you think is more, controversial. Now, let's see what else. Oh, yeah, kicking off the card, Austin Lane and Robelis Despain. Yeah, you can't just be a Taekwondo guy in the UFC. At least Despain's not getting finished in these fights, but, you have to know how to stuff a takedown. Like you have to know how to get back up from bottom. And if guys like Austin Lane, and who was the one before that that did it to him? Someone else did it to him. I just forget. We've seen so many fights, guys. Um, who did it right before to Rob Ellis? Oh yeah, Waldo. Waldo, who like has never even wrestled before in his life. And let me tell y'all something that's interesting when you look at the stats of the Waldo fight and the Austin Lane fight. They have something very common. Both guys only had 3 takedowns in their fights. What does that mean? That means that one takedown, round was over. Buddy couldn't get back up. Next round, one takedown, Buddy can't get back up. Round's over. Does it again in the third round. This has happened twice in a row. I think that you can't give Despain another fight for about 6 months to a year. You have to, my boy said, life alert. Help, I've fallen and can't get up, straight up. I think that you have to wait at least 6 months to a year. You have to get this guy. Isn't he in Florida though, training with like some of the best guys in the world, and he still can't get up from bottom? Yeah, wrestling doesn't come naturally to some people. It is what it is. I mean, isn't this guy like an Olympian Taekwondo guy? Like, so yeah, striking might come naturally to him, but not MMA striking, because in those instances yesterday when they were on the feet, he was so concerned about the threat of the takedown that he didn't even let his hands go at all. So I just think that he needs a little time to figure things out, and we'll see if he can correct that or not. So that's it for UFC and for PFL. Let's talk about the UFC gloves. So the new UFC gloves. So ever since UFC 302, I believe it was, they introduced the new gloves, and the point of the new gloves was to minimize eye pokes, protect like hand breaks and stuff like that. Um, but I don't think they, you know, saw or foreshadowed that it could have an impact on the knockdown rate. Now, granted, one was UFC 302. Let's pull that up. March, probably. When was it? No, June. June. So hasn't even been that long. So UFC 302 is when the first gloves were announced. Now, stats have come out that since then, the knockdown rate has gone down significantly. The knockout rate has also gone down. I'm not talking about knockouts with kicks or with knees, or you take someone down and ground and pound. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff, or elbow. I'm talking about with y'all ever seen the movie Friday? You don't need no gun. All you need is this. I don't remember what he actually said, but rest in peace to Pops from Friday. That's a gangster right there. Yeah, but all you need is this. For those listening at home that aren't watching me, all you need is your 2 fists. You don't need no gun. But the thing is, man. So at first, people were complaining about the new gloves, kind of within like the first month or two of it happening, and I was one of the guys. I was like, "Hey guys, we don't have a large enough sample size to really judge this." And to an extent, we still don't. We still don't. I mean, it hasn't even been a year. But at this point, I'm like, after yesterday, when like every single fight went over, dude, you could have did a whole card parlay with every over, and you would have cashed. Like at some point, I mean, I don't know how many more events it's going to take. I'm hoping that this is just a little, a little variance, a little time where the judges suck and there's not many knockdowns, and that's about to change. But yeah, I'm starting to think that it's a problem because, like I said, I was one of the guys that was like, oh, we don't have a large enough sample size. And again, we still might not, but I don't know, man. It's starting to get scary when heavyweights aren't getting knockdowns, when dudes that are known for knocking people down aren't knocking people down. Yeah, I think they need to look into it. I really do think they need to look into it. And also, if the point was to minimize eye pokes, they haven't minimized shit. I mean, you all saw Cameron Smotherman getting eye poked to death last night. There were a lot of other ones too. So it hasn't fixed eye pokes. It's ruined knockouts and knockdowns. Again, I hope I'm wrong. Hopefully, it's just the sample size. It's only been since June. We're in October now. But I don't want to have to wait 5 years for them to be like, okay, yeah, the gloves truly are a problem. Like, I think we should figure this out right away. Is that a problem, or are we just going through a little variance right now? I think that's what needs to be determined. All right, let's look through the comments. Y'all got any questions for me? Leave them for me. Let's see what's up. Alexander said, "What's up, Dan? Greetings from Sweden." Alexander, I appreciate it, man. Second Alexander from Sweden. First being Alexander Gustafsson. So shout out, my man. Moyes Audio in the house. Shout out Moyes. He said 30-27. Smelly Melly was more controversial than the fight not getting stopped in the third round. I think that's what he's implying. He says we are doomed. We are doomed. Alexander wants to see Fluffy versus Jared Cannonier. Yeah, exactly. Something like that, where like just like we were talking about with flyweight, where we got to usher out certain people that like how is Nicolau still a top 10 guy? How is Steve Erceg still a top 10 guy? Well, Jared Cannonier, I think, is definitely a top 10 guy, but let me see if he's a top 5 guy currently. Okay, no, he's number 7. But he's still ranked ahead of Fluffy. Fluffy's not even in the top 10. On Tuesday, he will be, but as of right, I mean, I think he will be. I don't know. With these rankings, the rankings panelists are a word I'm not allowed to use that is a synonym for stupid as, you know? Um, but when you look at middleweight and you're talking about Fluffy, currently he's 13. Like I said, guys, number 2 is Israel Adesanya. I love Izzy, but like Izzy's already won the belt twice. He ain't going up the mountain. He's going down the mountain. Nasruddin Imavov, that's a stud right there. At number 4, that's a good fight. Kyle Bahio, another stud at number 5. But then at number 6 and number 7, you got Marvin Vettori and Jared Cannonier, who, similar like we were talking about with Nicolau and Erceg, Vettori and Cannonier, they can be ushered out the top 10 now by these emerging guys like Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. So I absolutely agree with you when you say that that's one of the matchups that should happen. I personally want to see the Izzy fight. I don't know why. I just because they're so like drastically different in every way imaginable. The stand up versus the grappling, their personalities, how they go about things. They're just polar opposites. It's intriguing to me, and I don't think Izzy can get back up from bottom against this guy. But can Izzy hurt him to the body early and finish? Izzy hasn't finished anything in a while. So actually, the last thing he finished was Poatan, which is like holy fucking shit, right? Who does that? This sport is crazy, guys. My boy Meticulous said he wants to see the Imavov fight. 2 young studs. I like it. Alexander says Pereira versus Holland next. Michelle Pereira versus Holland? Yeah, why not? Why not? We're on a Fade Holland tour here. Every single fight. Like, I mean, unless we have to lay something stupid. But the thing is, Holland is always overvalued for whatever reason. It's because he had an amazing run like 5 years ago. People are still stuck on that. He was like the Cowboy Cerrone of the middleweight and welterweight division like a long time ago. And I think people haven't caught up that, the guy made his millions and he ain't motivated anymore. But I'm down for that Michelle Pereira versus Kevin Holland fight. Absolutely. Dry Zero said, loving the activity recently, Dan. I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm going to keep doing it. Anabolic Outpost. What a great name. Says, I've been grinding. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Finesse the books. Elkins, such a gangster. I agree. He really is a gangster. I mean, 40 years old, on a win streak in the UFC, putting on performances like that, 0 quit in him whatsoever. Elkins is literally the guy that you're gonna have to carry him out of the octagon to get him to stop fighting. Like he could have a private conversation with Dana White. His family could pull him aside, and this guy is gonna keep fighting. So that's the kind of man Darren Elkins is. So shout out to him. Finesse the Books also said Asu round 3 KO will haunt my dreams forever. Which round did he drop Nicolau in? Let me double check that. I thought it was the second round, but I could be mistaken. We saw a lot of fights last night. Hold on. So he dropped Nicolau. Oh no, you're right. You're right. He did drop him in that third round. So and you had a round 3 KO prop. Man, I'm really sorry. Yeah, I just think Asu, he's a very good fighter and he pushes a pace, but he's not as experienced in finishing fights via knockout. I think he only has 3 on his record, and his record's like 21-2. So when you have that large of a sample size, but that little knockouts, that's just not his style. He's more about pushing the pace and outworking you. But man, you got very close because you did drop him in that third round. Just it doesn't quite have not the skills, or the instinct, but more so he hasn't really developed that finishing ability, because finishing fights isn't just something that anybody can do. It takes skill, it takes timing, it takes patience. You got to know how to do it, and not everybody can do it. As you saw yesterday, every single fight went over. Should we blame the new gloves on Asu not getting that knockout? So let's see what else y'all got. Jason said, I think you need StreamYard or something to put the comments on stream. Yeah, I know. And I have StreamYard. I pay them $50 a month. But for some reason, it got disconnected from my YouTube channel and I can't reconnect it. So I got to figure that out. They give me the most insane hoops you wouldn't even imagine. But hey, YouTube's letting me stream. So shout out YouTube. Moy says Asu title shot. Let's see where Asu should move into the rankings on that topic. So, like I said, he was number 14. He just beat number 7. So now he takes number 7. I mean, you can put him in there with Alex Perez. Again, another guy. We were talking about Urseg. We were talking about Nicolau. What about Alex Perez? We can get him out the rankings too, at least out the top 10. Get Asu Almabayev in that spot. Tagir Ulanbekov's ranked number 11. That's insane. He should be a top 10 guy. So I'm saying you take out Alex Perez, Mateusz Nicolau, and Steve Urseg from the top 10. You replace them with Tagir Ulanbekov, Cody Durden, and Asu Almabayev, and all of a sudden flyweights great again. So I think that's the move. Mugen said my take on Rob Font was spot on. I don't know if that's sarcasm or not. I actually don't think my breakdown of that fight was that bad. My pick was wrong, but I think the overall assessment wasn't that off, and I still don't think it is. I just think that Kyler didn't land the damage necessary to get Rob Font to that point where Davison got him, where Jose got him, where Chito got him, and Sandhagen did the same shit. He didn't hurt Font. He just wrestled him. You can't, you have to put damage on Rob Font. But shout out to you for getting that dog cash on Rob Font, because he was a huge underdog. Like I said, I didn't bet Kyler. I bet the under, and it wasn't even close. That was crazy. He said, why was Rob Font such plus money? Because of his current form, because he had lost 4 or 5, because it looked like he was getting wobbled, by the smallest touches. It looked like he couldn't stuff a takedown. But the thing that we got to take into consideration, I should have taken it into consideration too. I thought that maybe Kyler had matured from the performance against Paiva, which was a few years ago, where, he blew his load in that first round trying to get him out, had not much left in the next 2. But maybe Kyler's explosive style just taxes him so much that he needs to fight at a more sustained pace. And that's going to be an issue going forward. So we'll see how they match him up. But like I said, blown opportunity, because this was your chance to get into the top 10. Now you're going to have to fight someone that's lower ranked, but dangerous, like a Montel Jackson, who's like number 15 in the world. Like I said, Rob Font was number 10. You lost that. Now you're going to have to go fight number 15 in the world, Montel Jackson, who's way more dangerous. So, yeah, it's an unfortunate situation for Kyler. Let's see what else y'all said. Sean said, what's up, Sean? He said, we need new gloves, but in some cases, refs let it go too long as well. But it's definitely a problem. Yeah, did you think maybe the Sumadarji fight, they could have stopped it there? But the thing is, then he comes back and wins the 3rd round. So it's like, did they really let it go on too long or not? So yeah, it's tough to say, but yeah, we definitely just have to keep our eyes on what's going on with these new gloves and just be very honest. Because I'm repeating myself, but when it first came out, the first month or 2, and the knockouts and knockdown rate kind of went down, I was like, guys, small sample size, relax. But now we're deep into October, and yesterday every single over cashed, and at some point you got to be like, okay, what's going on here? Hopefully, again, it's just a little variance, just a little cycle where not too many knockouts and knockdowns are happening. But if this keeps going on, you have to address the new gloves and say something that, hey, listen, it's okay to admit you were wrong. It didn't have, the effect that we wanted it to have. And now we go on and try something new. But there could be a situation where they have some kind of contract that they're locked into for many years. They have to use these new gloves for X amount of years. I don't know. I don't know the paperwork. I don't know what the deal is. Hopefully, for their sake, they can just cut it off at any point. And if that's the case, we'll see. So next week, we got Topuria and Holloway, and there's a lot of heavy hitters on that card. So if the knockouts don't happen next week, then we have to go big on voicing our opinions on that. Let's see what else y'all say. Mugen says he wants to see Cameron versus Peyton Talbot, like Cameron Smotherman. I'm not sure he's ready for Peyton Talbot, man. Peyton Talbot but then again, Peyton Talbot is just coming off a win over Yanis Gemori, so they are kind of trying to slow roll him a bit. So yeah, I mean, sure, I can see it, but wouldn't you like to see Peyton? Let me see the top 15 of bantamweight real quick. Okay, y'all know how I was talking about how Kyler Phillips blew an opportunity losing to the number 10 guy when you had your chance to enter the top 10 against Font, who's 37 years old, et cetera, et cetera. How about Kyler Phillips versus Peyton Talbot? Hey, we try to get you to the top 10. You didn't want to listen. Now you got to fight our top prospect who's unranked, unheralded, but an absolute killer. Here's Peyton Talbot. Let's see Peyton Talbot versus Kyler Phillips next. My boy Ricky said, Dan, to make flyweight great again. Hey, I'm trying. I'm trying. Let's make UFC great again with by fixing these gloves. Meticulous said, shout out Firaz Zahabi. Hey, listen, shout out Firaz. I'm not convinced Firaz was the reason that Rob Font won last night, because I also think Rob Font's head coach, Tyson Chartier, is a great coach. But to your credit, maybe just getting out of that comfort zone in New England, getting some new looks, just, like I said, get out of your comfort zone. That was probably good for him. Felt refreshed out there and really pushed the pace in the second and third rounds. Sean says, do these every event, Dan. Loving the post reaction. I appreciate that. So last week when I did it on the Brandon Royval fight, because I cashed that plus 260 on Royval, so people thought, well, you're only doing after the battle because you won. Well, this weekend, I think I dropped like 1.5 or 1.7 units, and I'm still doing it after the battle in my hotel room. So, yeah, that was proven to be fake news. But yeah, all right, last call for questions, and now I'm getting out of here. I got to go to a brunch here in about 30 minutes. Let me see if there's anything else to say regarding yesterday. Did you all agree with Elkins and Pineda getting the fight of the night over Gian Matsumoto over Brad Katona? That's a question to ask. And then let me tell you all this as well. This week coming up, we got a big fight. Not a lot of fights, but a big fight. Holloway and Taporia. Let me see who's on that card real quick, because I know there's some really good fights on there. So next week, here's what we got. We got Taporia and Holloway. We got Robert Whitaker and Hamza. Holy shit. We got Lerone Murphy and Ige. We got Ankalaev and Rakic. And Rakic is like a plus 300 dog. We got Shara Bullet and Petrosian. Jeff Neal and RDA. Oral Boy and Rebecca. Saeed Nurmagomedov versus Daniel Willie Cat Santos. Kennedy and Zechiku versus Chris Barnett. That's hilarious. Yeah. Next week is okay. Next week we are going to find out if the gloves are an issue or not. Because even a card like that, I mean, in normal times, a card like that is going to produce an insane amount of knockouts. So we will find out next week. Low T City Ortega asked me, yo, Dan, what do you think of Jake Hadley? Basically the same thing I've thought before. I think that he's super talented, but I think there's something mental going on where when someone stands up to him, when someone pushes the pace on him, he doesn't react as well. But when he can be the bully, that's when he truly excels. So I do want to see him get another chance. I'd like to see the original fight, him and Brady Heastan, run that back. If he drops that, going to have to go back to Cage Warriors. If he wins that, hey, you're still alive. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, it's not about winning and losing. It's about how you perform in these fights. Tons of people can lose fights, but still their stock can rise. You can put max effort and show your heart, show your ability in a loss. But then there's losses like, the Hadley fight where it's just you're scratching your head. You're wondering, like, is this guy truly as good as advertised? What happened, especially against a short notice opponent who flew from Dubai, a 16-hour flight, took the fight on less than a week notice, made weight, and then goes out there and schools you. That's crazy. So yeah, we're going to have to see. We're going to have to see what happens with that. So I think that's it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning into this special edition of After the Battle. Please smash that like button for me. Hit the subscribe button. Comment on this. If you're watching after the fact, comment on it. Share it, all that. I truly appreciate it. I'll be back next week for UFC 308, which is an insane card. Going to be dropping content all week as usual. So until the next time, let's cash these bets.